believe that Shmuel sent a message out to everyone yesterday that today's shir, rather than being split between Shvius and Parsha, we would spend the shir time entirely on Parsha. And this is what we talked about last week, that we're going to have certain days where we're going to concentrate on the Ramban Nachmanides and on the Rambam Maimonides Hilchos Yesodei Torah Perek Aleph. So today we're going to look at a yesodistic, a fundamental Ramban Nachmanides in Parshas Bo, which I believe I mentioned on Tuesday when we were learning the Das Tevunos of the Ramchal, this idea of Teva, of nature. Things happen naturally. And the Ramban is going to obliterate that idea and the idea of things happen naturally. And he's going to explain that in the context of why we're Shomer Torah mitzvahs, what's the purpose of Shmiras Torah mitzvahs, and the fundamental idea of what do we believe in, what's our emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and these are contained in the last Ramban Nachmanides in this week's Parsha. Shmuel, I sent to Shmuel, I believe Shmuel distributed it as the first handout for today, 3 pages of the Art Scroll Ramban. So you can see it in the Lashon Kodesh and the English. And then he sent out a second handout, which is from Rav Gil Devere Sefer, which we've used in the past. Rav Gil Devere every week explains a piece of Rav Kook that's Nogea, that's relevant to this week's parsha. Before we go into that, 3 times a year we learn the first Rashi in Chumash. When we have the Parsha Shir for Bereshis, when we learn Parshas Bo, this week's Parsha, and Parshas HaChodesh right before Pesach, we make sure that we learn this Rashi 3 times a year. It is the very first Rashi in Chumash. Bereshis Bo Elokim es hashamayim ve'es ha'oretz. And we already learned in the Shir, the Bereshis Shir, the difference of opinion between Rashi, for example, and Ramban Nachmanides about what that means. Does it mean the chronological order of creation? In the beginning, this is the first thing that happened, which is basically Nachmanides and his pirush about the Yuli. Or does Bereshis Bo Elokim mean a setting? In the beginning, when God was creating heaven and earth, this is what was happening. But that doesn't mean that this is the chronological order. And Rashi's, for example, proof is the fact that the Torah speaks within a pasuk base, it talks about mayim, water. What day did God create water? We have no day that God said, Vayomer Elokim yehi mayim. So obviously there was something here before God said or, and therefore this is not a chronological order. That's Rashi Shita, Ramban Shita, it is chronological order. Be that as it may, Rashi says the following, the very first Rashi in Chumash. Amar Rebbe Yitzchak said, Lo hayitzorach lahaskil es haTorah ela me'achodesh hazeh lochem shehi mitzvah yishona shenistavu bo Yisrael. The Torah should start with mitzvahs. The Torah is not a storybook. The Torah is about a code of law. 365 things you don't do and 248 things you do. And those are the 613 mitzvahs. 365 things that we're told not to do, and 248 things that we are told to do. So why do we have all of Chumash Bereshis? It sounds like stories, chas v'shalom, and that's a bad word to use. The Zohar HaKadosh warns us not to look at any of the, what we would call, quote-unquote stories, not to consider them stories. They're much more than stories. They're not just good time stories. So Rashi says, the whole Chumash Bereish is very interesting. Creation, which we don't understand much about anyway, Adam and Chava, which we really don't understand about eating from a tree, and they did eat, and they ate from the tree, and then Nachash is persuading them to eat from the tree, and then Cain kills Hevel, and then Noach and the Mabul, and the whole world's destroyed, and the Dor Haflog, and God has to spread out the people and make them into 70 nations, and then we go on to Avraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, Bilhah, Zilpah, the 12 Shvatim, they sell Yosef, they go to Mitzrayim. Why don't we start, Rashi asks, Rabbi Yitzchak asks, why don't we start with a mitzvah? The first mitzvah that was told to Klal Yisrael, as a Klal Yisrael, in other words, Moshe Rabbeinu was told something that is relevant to all of Klal Yisrael, is in this week's Parsha, Parshas Bo. HaKadosh Baruch Hu came and said, HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem. The first month of the Jewish calendar year, when you calculate months, is Nisan. HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem, Rosh Chodashim. Rishon Hu Lachem L'Chodshei Hashan. It's a pasuk in this week's Parsha. When Jews calculate a year in terms of months, in terms of holidays, Nisan is the first month of the year. There is no pasuk in the Torah that in the Chamisha Chumshei Torah that talks about Tishrei, Cheshvan, Kislev. It doesn't appear in any single pasuk. The Torah always talks about numbers. B'chodesh Harishon is Pesach. B'chodesh Hashlishi, the Jews accepted the Torah at Har Sinai. B'chodesh Hashvi'i, in Tishrei you blow shofar. If you count from Nisan, you have Nisan, Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz, Av, Elul, Tishrei. Tishrei is the 7th month. So when the Torah tells us to blow shofar, it says you blow shofar on the first day of the 7th month. When the Torah tells us to fast on Yom Kippur, it tells us to fast on the 10th day of the 7th month. When the Torah tells us about the mitzvah of Sukkot, it tells us about the 15th day of the 7th month. It doesn't say Tishrei. And the reason that these numbers appear is because they are calculated through Nisan. Nisan is the first month of the year, Iyar is the second month of the year, Sivan is the third month of the year. And this is a mitzvah, HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem Rosh Chodashim, Kiddush HaChodesh, and this is the first month of the year is Nisan. So Rabbi Yitzchak asks, the very first Rashi in Chumash, the Torah should start from the mitzvah. This week's Parsha should really be the beginning of the whole Torah. The Torah should begin as the pasuk in this week's Parsha. In Perek Yud Beis of Shemos, this week's Parsha, Vayomer Hashem al Moshe v'Aaron be'eretz Mitzrayim lema, HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem. That should be the pasuk. When you open a Sefer Torah, this is what it should say. Vayomer Hashem al Moshe v'Aaron be'eretz Mitzrayim lema, HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem Rosh Chodashim, Rishon Lachem L'Chodshei Hashanah. That's where you open a Sefer Torah, that's where it should start. Instead, we have a whole Chumash Bereshis, and then we have Parshas Shemos V'Eira and part of Parshas Bo, which appear to be very interesting things that God did for the world, but that can be in a medrash. We have plenty of medrashim, etc. Why is that part of what we consider just a code of law? Umatam Pasach Bereshis. Why did we open up the Torah with the entire Chumash Bereshis up until Parshas Bo? Rashi now answers in the name of Rabbi Yitzchak. Mishum Koyach Masav Higid La'amay Losis Lem Nachlas Goyim. It's a verse in Tehillim, Perek Kuf Yud Aleph. David HaMelech writes in Tehillim, Koyach Masav Higid La'amay, Koach Masav, the power, the might of God's deeds, God revealed to his people, Losis Lahem Nachlas Goyim, to give them the quote-unquote inheritance, the land of other nations. God revealed his might, God revealed his power to his people, so they would understand that when God gives them Eretz Yisrael, it's because he gave them Eretz Yisrael, and nobody can have a taina on the Jewish people that they inhabit and live in Eretz Yisrael, because I am the powerful, almighty, sovereign God who created heaven and earth. So therefore we get the entire of all the events God created the world. God runs the world. When Adam and Chava didn't heed his commandments, they were chased out of the Gan Eden. Avram, then when the world became perverted, God destroyed the world and left behind Noah and his family to rebuild the world. When that didn't work and the generations continued to do what things they shouldn't do, and became the Dor HaFloga, the Rosh Hashanah selected Avram, and Avram's descendants became the chosen people who would serve God and be the examples for the world. And all this is what Bereshis is about, and this is what Yetzias Mitzrayim is about, as we'll see in Nachmanides today. This is what the Torah is about before we get into any you shall do and you shall not do. You need to understand the power, the might, the sovereignty of God who gave you Eretz Yisrael before I tell you a single mitzvah. Shem Yomu, Rashi continues, Shem Yomu Umas Olam Yisrael. If the Goyim will ever say to Klal Yisrael, Listim Atem, you are robbers. Shekevashtem Arza Shiva Goyim. You conquered the land of 7 nations. You are settlers. You don't belong in this land. You settled someone else's land. Hey, Marvin, what do we say to the Goyim? The whole world, the whole universe belongs to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hu Bra'ah, he created it. Bereshis Bo Elokim es hashamayim v'sa'aretz. V'nosna l'shayosha beinav. And God gave each piece of land in the whole world to the people that he felt belong in that land. V'ritzono nosna lahem. At some point in the early history of the world, there were 7 nations that lived in Eretz Yisrael. And at his will, he took it away from those 7 nations. And he gave it to us. If you keep on reading Chumash Bereshis and Chamishim Sheitayra, how many times it mentions that the land belongs to you, Avram, and your descendants. The land belongs to you, Yitzhak. The land belongs to you, Yaakov. The Eretz Yisrael belongs to the Jewish people forever. And if the Goyim ever come and say this is not your land, you say to them, God created the world. He decided that Eretz Yisrael belongs to the Jewish people. He gave it to us forever. End of discussion. This then becomes the introduction to the whole Torah. We're now in Parshas Bo. Mi'etz Hashem, next week will be Tu B'Shvat. We read Parshas Bereshis. We started it on Simchas Torah. We started it on Shmini Atzeres. We read part of Bereshis. The Shabbos after, well, actually, I believe this past year, Shmini Atzeres was Shabbos. So we read Parshas Bereshis. And it's been many Shabbatot ago. We keep on reading Bereshis, Noach, Lech Lecha, Vayera, etc. And we've been reading Parshas every Shabbos. And all of those Parshas and all of those Shabbatot were an introduction for this week's Shabbos. This week's Shabbos, we're going to read Parshas Bo and hear that mitzvah, Chodesh Hazeh Lachem. And the reason we're ready to listen to mitzvahs is because we have listened every Shabbos to this introductory message. God created the world. He is the sovereign of the world, and he decides who gets what. And he gave us Eretz Yisrael for eternity. And if you have a problem with that, go argue with God. This is our land. And now that Shabbos after Shabbos after Shabbos after Shabbos, that message has been drilled into our kishkas. Eretz Yisrael belongs to Klal Yisrael and not to the Goyim. Now you're ready to listen to a mitzvah. And this is our response to the Goyim. And as I mentioned, I believe last year we were learning this Rashi in Parshas HaChodesh. It was a big Kiddush Hashem. That time, it was, I think it happened a year ago, 2 years ago. You can still view it. Danny Danan, the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations, at some point, there was a discussion about the quote-unquote settlements. And it came his turn to speak. He took a yarmulke out of his pocket. He put on the yarmulke. He took out a chumash. And he said, Bereshis Bo Elokim es hashamayim v'ha'aretz. He read it in Hebrew. He read it in English. And basically, he said over the Rashi, we're really not interested in what any of you have to say here in the United Nations, you bunch of anti-Semites. The land belongs to us because the God who created the heavens and the earth gave it to us, and no one in this room is going to take it from us. That was an unbelievable Kiddush Hashem that the Rashi, I don't remember if he said Rashi, I don't think he did, but he said exactly what Rashi said. It was a tremendous Kiddush Hashem that a Yid stood up in front of this assembly of anti-Semites and said, enough of this nonsense. We're going back to basics. God created the heavens and the earth and he gave us Eretz Yisrael, and that's it. We're not going to discuss these settlements anymore. So when the Goyim say this to us, we have to remember the first Rashi in Chumash. When we read this, we have to remember, when we read this kind of material, we need to remember the first Rashi in Chumash, and we're going to nebuch, I hope not, but we're never going to hear a lot about this, unfortunately, over the next years. Democrats are asphyxiated on this idea of Jews and Eretz Yisrael. Yesterday, for those who noticed it, there was a little blurb on the news that the American embassy in Israel, the ambassador, the embassy in Israel, suddenly changed the address of its website. It said for the last 4 years, perhaps before that, it said the Embassy of the United States of America. The Embassy of the United States of America to the state of Israel. I believe that's what it said. And suddenly yesterday in the afternoon, it changed to, and it was reported on the news, the Embassy of the United States of America to the state of Israel, the West Bank, and Gaza. And that's how it remained. In other words, as West Bank and Gaza is not part of Eretz Yisrael. The Biden administration said to us yesterday, listim atem, you stole the West Bank and you stole Gaza, and the embassy is an embassy to Israel and the West Bank and Gaza. Several hours later, it appears that they switched back. I don't know why, but it became the Embassy of the United States of America to the state of Israel, and they dropped West Bank and Gaza. Okay, but stay tuned for how this kind of story and this kind of material develops. Hopefully not, but develops over the next few years. And we're going to have to hold on to this Rashi tight. The answer is always going to be in our hearts and minds as first Rashi. Gemara and Brachos on Daf Tes Amud Beis. This week's parsha, Shmos, Perek Yud Beis. Sorry, Shmos here, Aleph. Right before Makas Bechoros, the Rebbeinu Shalom tells Moshe, I'm going to bring one more Makkah on Mitzrayim, and then you're going to leave with the Jewish people. And then Pasuk Beis, Perek Yud Aleph, Pasuk Beis says, Dabena ba'oznei ha'am. No means please in this context. God said to Moshe Rabbeinu, please talk to the Jewish people. Talk it into their ears. Let them hear this. Please talk to the Jewish people. V'yishalu ishmeis ve'eu v'ishameis ve'usa klei chesed u'klei zav. Tell them that they are to borrow gold and silver from their Egyptian neighbors and take it out from Mitzrayim. Now, of course, There was never any intention here to return it. And of course, the big kasha is, why did not HaKadosh Baruch Hu just tell Moshe to tell the Jewish people, take gold and silver? Why did he tell them to borrow gold and silver when there was no intention to bring it back? Kasha, we're not going to deal with that today. But the Ribono Shel Olam said to Moshe, please, and this is the only time in the whole Torah that the Ribono Shel Olam, when he tells Moshe to do something, he says, please get this done. Please. There's no other place in the Torah where HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Moshe, please tell the Jews to wear tzitzis. Please tell the Jews to eat matzah on Pesach. Please tell the Jews to build a sukkah. It doesn't appear anywhere else. It's only in this week's parasha. Dar b'no ba'oznei am, please speak to the Jewish people. Get the Jewish people to go to their Egyptian neighbors and borrow gold and silver from them. Their gold vessels, their silver vessels. And the Jewish people went off and did this, and they borrowed the gold and silver. The Gemara in Brachos on Daf Tesam and Aleph, Daf Tesam and Beis discusses these psukim. The Gemara on Daf Tesam and Aleph, Brachos Tesam and Aleph says the following: Daber no ba'oznei ha'am. Moshe Rabbeinu, please talk to the Jewish people. Please talk to them and persuade them to take the gold and the silver. Amrei Dvei Rabbi Yanai. In the yeshiva of Rabbi Yanai, they said the following: Ein no elo loshen bakasha. The word no is a loshen bakasha. Bevakasha. Moshe Rabbeinu, please talk to the Jewish people and please get them to borrow gold and silver from the Egyptians. What's the please? Why not just a commandment? Tell the Jewish people the same way that you tell the Jewish people to eat matzah, and the same way you tell the Jewish people to bring a korban Pesach, and the same way at the end of this week's parsha, Moshe told HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe, tell the Jewish people to wear tefillin, and tell the Jewish people about pidyon petach hamor. He didn't use the word please. What is the word please here? Please tell them to borrow gold and silver. Amle HaKadosh Baruch Hu Moshe. HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to Moshe, the Gemara answers, B'bakasha mimcha, I'm asking you for a favor, Moshe. Lech emor lahem liYisrael. Go tell the Jewish people. B'bakasha mikem. Go tell the please go tell the Jewish people, Moshe, that I'm asking them, please. Repeat the please. Moshe Rabbeinu, please tell the Jewish people that I'm in my name. In my name, Moshe Rabbeinu, tell the Jewish people, please do the following. B'bakasha mikem. Please, Jewish people. Sha'alu Mitzrayim klei chesef u'klei zahav. Please borrow gold and silver from the Egyptians. Why? Shalayoma oso tzaddik. Because I don't want that tzaddik. Who's that tzaddik? It's Avram Avinu. Rashi says. Avodim v'inu osam kiyam bahem, v'achrechen yetzu b'chush gadol lo kiyam bahem. At the bris bein Absarim Parshas Lech Lecha, the Ribono Shel Olam told Avram Avinu, your children, your descendants are going into an exile for 400 years, and they will be slaves, and they will be pained and tortured. And then the Ribono Shel Olam also told Avram Avinu that when they leave, they're going to leave b'chush gadol. They're going to leave with great wealth. So Moshe Rabbeinu, please do me a favor. Get the Jewish people, please, Jewish people, take gold and silver with you. Because if you don't take gold and silver, Avram Avinu in Shamayim is going to come to me and he's going to say, Ribono Shel Olam, the promise that you made that they would enslave and torture my children, you kept. Ooh, you really kept that. They killed the babies, they tortured the men, they raped the women. Ooh, Ribono Shel Olam, you really kept that promise, good geschmack. But you also promised me, Ribono Shel Olam, that my children, my descendants would leave Mitzrayim with wealth. And they didn't leave with wealth. So only part of your promise to me came true. So the Rebbeinu Shalom says to Moshe Rabbeinu, please tell the Jewish people, please take the gold and silver, because if they don't take the gold and silver, the Avraham Avinu is going to come to me and say, I kept the promise that they were tortured, and I didn't keep my promise that they got the wealth. Again, here there's a kasha, which we won't deal with today. What is HaKadosh Baruch Hu saying this to Moshe? Moshe Rabbeinu, I need the Jewish people to take the gold and silver out because I don't want Avraham Avinu to say I'm a liar, chas v'sholom. Forget Avraham Avinu, forget the liar. If you told Avraham Avinu this is going to happen, make it happen. Just make it happen. The reason that you want this to happen is so Avraham Avinu doesn't call you a liar. That's the Ribono Shel Olam's, the way he conducts the world. Moshe Rabbeinu, go get them to borrow gold and silver, because if they don't take the gold and silver, Avraham Avinu is going to say, I lied. So make sure it happens. Forget about the lie. Ribono Shel Olam said it, make it happen. Okay. So the Ribono Shel Olam says sort of the double please. Moshe Rabbeinu, please deliver this message, and please tell the Jewish people that in my name I say please. Take the gold and silver, because I don't want Avraham Avinu to say that I didn't keep my promise to leave with wealth. Moshe Rabbeinu, the Gemara continues and comes to the Jewish people and says, Ribono Shel Olam says, please start borrowing gold and silver so we can leave Mitzrayim with wealth. Amrulo. So the Jewish people said to him, Los sons, please leave us alone. That's halavai. We just want to get out of here. We're here 210 years. My Zayda, my Baba, my elder Zayd, my elder Baba were here already. We want to get out. We don't care about the gold and silver. Take us out this second. We don't care about Makkah's B'chayos. We don't want another Makkah. Just get us out of here already. Halavai, that we can get out of here. The Gemara says, Hamosh. Marshal Adam Shoyachavish Beves Asurim. Oimim Loy Bene Adam Moitzim Oischach Lamacha Mibes Asurim. Venoisen Lachamam in Harbe. The Omalahem Bakoshim came out Siena Yoim Venyamakish Glum. The Gemara says, Marshal, somebody's been in prison for many years, and a person comes to him and says, tomorrow you're going to be released from prison, and you're going to be given a lot of money. And the person says, the prisoner says, Tutz Matoy, do me a favor. I've been here for so long already. Forget the money. Just open the doors and let me out. Just let me out. I don't want to wait till tomorrow. I don't know what can happen between today and tomorrow. Just open the door, let me out. I'll figure everything out myself. I don't want to wait another day here. I don't know what can happen today. I'm not waiting for the money. And Klal Yisrael says to Moshe Rabbeinu, please just take us out of here today. Forget the money, forget the Makkah's B'chayos. Just take us out, please, today. And Moshe Rabbeinu had to persuade them, no, we're going to wait a little more to be a Makkah's B'chayos, and we're going to get the gold and silver. So the Ribono Shel Olam says, please, Moshe Rabbeinu, please tell the Jewish people in my name, please, please hang around a little longer and take the gold and the silver. And that's what they do. So in the second handout that was sent to you today, I think we called the handout number 2. It is from Rav Gil Devere Sefer on the Parshios, where each Parsha he quotes a piece of Rav Kook and develops it into the meaning of the Parsha. And this is in the middle of a piece on Parshas Bo. And Rav Devere is explaining something that Rav Kook wrote, which was earlier in this piece, which is not part of your handout. The part of your handout is Rav Devere's explanation. It seems that right before, not only it seems, it's very clear from the Psukim we just read, and from the Gemara we just read, that the Ribono Shel Olam didn't want the Jews to leave Mitzrayim until they had gold and silver. This became an important factor. The Ribono Shel Olam says, please, Moshe, tell the Jewish people, please take the gold and silver. I can't let them leave without the gold and silver. I know they want to leave today, and they're moichel on the gold and silver. Please, Moshe Rabbeinu, convince them to take the gold and silver, because otherwise Avraham Avinu is going to call me a liar. Rebbeinu Shalom, please. So Rebbeinu Shalom says, please take them out. So taking the gold and the silver almost became a precondition to going out. Until they took the gold and the silver, they were not going out. Think about that. This week's Parsha, Rebbeinu Shalom says they need to take the gold and silver. And the way the Gemara interprets the pasuk, they're going to have to take that gold and silver before they can go out. I cannot take the Jewish people out of Mitzrayim until they take the gold and silver, because then Avraham Avinu is going to call me a liar. Make sure they take the gold and silver. How did the gold and silver become such an important thing? Yes, Avraham Avinu may call me a liar. We already understood. We talked about the kasha before. That's not a reason for God to keep his promise. If people keep their promises because they're honest. People should not keep their promises because, oops, if I don't keep my promise, Reuben's going to call me a liar. Whether Reuben calls you a liar or not, you said something, you keep your promise. And the Rebbeinu Shalom saying here, Moshe Rabbeinu, make sure they take the gold and silver, otherwise Avraham Avinu is going to call what came by him. But this became a critical part of Yetzias Mitzrayim, taking the gold and the silver. What was so important about the Jewish people taking gold and silver? We understand HaKadosh Baruch Hu told it to Avraham Avinu, so let's take a step back. Why was this a necessary step in the Yetzias Mitzrayim? At the Bris Bein Absarim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Avraham Avinu, your children will be enslaved and tortured for 400 years. And then he could have said, HaKadosh Baruch Hu could have said, and then I will take them out with tremendous nisim and neflois, and they're going to accept the Torah at Har Sinai. Rebbeinu Shalom said to Avraham Avinu, and they're going to take wealth with them. Why was this taking of wealth became such an integral part of leaving Mitzrayim? The Rebbeinu Shalom wanted Jews to be wealthy. What did the Rebbeinu Shalom want here? He wanted a wealthy nation. So Rav Devir explains what Rav Kook wrote as follows. Hakavana hi'ikarit hayetzir b'chush gadol. The major motivation that HaKadosh Baruch Hu had, that the Jews leave Mitzrayim with great wealth, this was a load, people who didn't feel exalted. These were people who were down in the dumps. These were not people who were ready to leave Mitzrayim and become the light unto the nations. These were not a people that were ready to send a message to the world, nor would the world accept a message from them. They were downtrodden, enslaved. Okay, they left Mitzrayim. They had Kriyas Yamsuf, and Amalek right away attacked them. These people were not yet ready to be God's messengers on earth. You need to turn the slave into a prestigious human being who can deliver God's message on earth. It's wonderful. God took the slaves out of Mitzrayim. It was a wonderful story, and now the world continues. How do you convert the Jewish people from a downtrodden, enslaved people for 210 years, who now can stand up at a podium and lecture to the world? This is the God of the world. This is what your mission is in the world. This is the morality. This is what's correct. This is what's true. Who is going to listen to these people? La'am Yisrael yesh tafkid chashuv al bamas hahistoria. The Jewish people have an incredibly important purpose on the world stage of history. Who amur lahafetz es or Hashem ba'olam. The Jewish people have to bring God's light to all the nations of the world. Ha'or hazeh yuchal liyos mufatz rak im ma'amada shel ha'uma Yisraelis yemuram. The only way that Jewish people can bring God's light to the world is if they themselves as a people are in exalted state. The wandering Jew, the exiled Jew. We need to understand that the reason why Goyim created this whole idea of the wandering Jew, the exiled Jew, and they have such deep theological problems, which we spoke about. The Pope Yomach Shemam, all of them, the Roman Catholic Church, they should be chorev. Parenthetically now, I don't know if anybody saw this in the news. It was a little piece of the news, but it was a very important piece of the news. there's an organization, I don't know the names of these organizations, Baruch Hashem, but there's an organization of bishops. And the organization of bishops drafted a statement about the incoming Biden administration. And what they were saying was that the incoming Biden administration is a danger because they are going to promote evil. They use the word evil. They're going to promote evil. They are going to promote immorality, abortion, etc., etc. And this was the statement that these group of bishops were going to release. And the Pupsi and his people put, quote unquote, an embargo on this statement. They don't want to make such a public statement that these things are evil. No. And so the Pope Yamach Shemam, with the rest of the group over there, released some kind of other statement. Soif Dover, however, it happened, that original statement of the bishops was released. There are quote unquote three major religions in the world. But there's only one religion that can still be a light unto the nations. Everything else is forget about it. The Catholic Church, they condone evil. Everything they stand for is worthless. The world of Islam, they stand for, they're nice Muslims, there's this Muslims, there's that Muslims. The Quran, the one interpretation of the Quran is nice, and one interpretation of the Quran is to kill. Yeah, Mashiach, we can only judge by what's happening. There's only one people that has the ability to yet be a light unto the nations, the darkness in which these people find themselves in, and that is the Jewish people. This whole idea of the wandering Jew, this whole idea of Jew in exile, is to make sure the Jews never become a light unto the nations. You cannot be a light unto the nations when you talk about Jewish people as wandering Jews. They have no country, they have no land, they have no stability, they're being kicked out from country to country. And the more you talk about Jews that way, the less chance they have to spread the word of God around the world. This is the underlying motivation of Goyim talking about wandering Jews and Goyim wanting Jews to be exiled. This whole idea that Jews live in Eretz Yisrael and have a government and have an army, Baruch Hashem, is so antithetical specifically to the Roman Catholic Church. And we spoke about that once, the theological problems they have in even recognizing the state of Israel and how many years it took them. The Pope recognized the state of Israel, Yamach Shemoy, but until then they couldn't recognize the state of Israel. Because how do you explain the state of Israel to the Roman Catholic world? For 2,000 years, we said that we're the chosen people. God has forsaken the Jewish people. Forget about it. He destroyed 2 temples. They're gone. They're finished. And the proof of the pudding is they're exiled from nation to nation. They're oppressed. They're pilloried. They're finished. We are the new Jewish people. We are the chosen people. And that's how they talk. They talked about themselves being the new Israel. And then suddenly, the Jewish people return to Eretz Yisrael. They create a state. They create a government. They create an army. And boom, what do you do with Roman Catholic Yamach Shemam theology? What do you do with that? They were never supposed to come back. So this is a complete contradiction to them. And the Ribono Shel Olam needs a Jewish people that are exalted, a Jewish people that can walk around the world with wealth, not because they should have fancy cars and fancy houses, but they should be able to live in such a way that people want to hear them. People want to listen to them. The Jewish people are not the wandering Jews. They have a message. They have a country. They have a state. In 70 some odd years, what in the world did these people do? No one else has done what they've done in 72 or 73 years. These people, there's something to hear from them. And Baruch Hashem today, there are countries that still have unplugged their ears to the craziness. and they want Israeli agricultural technology. They want Israeli computer technology. They want Israel to build drones for them. They want Israel to do so many things. Israel spreading, Jewish people are spreading their knowledge all over the world. So Ribono Shel Olam, when they leave Mitzrayim, the Ribono Shel Olam has a job for the Jewish people to do. He needs the Jewish people to bring his message to the whole world. You can't walk around as a downtrodden slave and say, I have God's message to you. And so Ribono Shel Olam takes these slaves out of Mitzrayim, but they need to go out biyad Ramah, as the Torah says in next week's Parshas Bo. They need to go up out Beresh Galei, the Uncle says on biyad Ramah. They need to go out shoulders lifted, heads high, with donkeys and camels and gold and silver. These are God's people that are ready now to bring a message to the world. Who's going to want to listen to a Jew that gets up and talks and wants to teach you about ethics and morals? If it's a downtrodden person, he's a miskin. Who wants to? How did you become a messenger of God to this world? What HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, borrow this gold and silver and take it with you. It was to uplift the people, to get the slave mentality out. You are now God's exalted people. There is no inherent purpose for God saying, take gold and silver. Take gold and silver so you can become wealthy and buy a couple of cars or buy a couple of good donkeys and buy more camels. That is not the purpose of this money. The purpose of this money was you are now free people. You're an exalted people. You can be an example to people. You can stand upright and you can lecture these people. You're not a downtrodden people anymore, and that's the only reason for this gold and silver. So obviously the Ribono Shel Olam says to Moshe Rabbeinu, please talk to these people. I know how desperate they want to get out today. Please talk to them and say my name, please. Please take the gold and silver with you, because you are going to be my messengers on earth. And to be my messengers on earth, I need to lift you up. You need to be exalted. People need to look up to you. Take the gold and silver, not because you need to be wealthy and have fancy houses and fancy tents and fancy cars and fancy boats. You need this to be an exalted people. That's the way the world, the Goyish world works. Suddenly you have a lot of money and you're very successful, the people want to listen to you. And I need people to listen to the Jewish people. They have my message. And this is the purpose for the gold and the silver. There is no other inherent purpose to this wealth. Let's take a look now, at least start this Ramban. I believe was the first handout that was sent to you. Bear in mind how many mitzvahs we do on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, on a yearly basis, that are called Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim. The purpose for doing this mitzvah is to remind you that God took us out of Mitzrayim. Not only do we do all kinds of mitzvahs to remind us that God took us out of Mitzrayim, there's a specific mitzvah that every day we are to remember that God took us out of Mitzrayim. We do it morning and night. The third parsha of Kriya Shema. The reason we read the third parsha of Kriya Shema, it's called Haskaras Yetzias Mitzrayim. The last pasuk in the parsha, Ani Hashem Elokeichem asher hotzeisi eschem me'eretz Mitzrayim lios lachem Elokim, Ani Hashem Elokeichem. That's where the pasuk ends in the Torah, and Chazal added the word emes. Ani Hashem Elokeichem asher hotzeisi eschem me'eretz Mitzrayim lios lachem Elokim, Ani Hashem Elokeichem emes. That's the purpose of the third parsha. Twice a day, morning and night, we must remember that God took us out of Mitzrayim. That's twice a day. And then we have all the Torah tells us at the end of this week's Parsha, Tefillin, to remember Yetzias Mitzrayim. Eat every year, Korban Pesach, remember Yetzias Mitzrayim. Eat matzah on Pesach, remember Yetzias Mitzrayim. All the Yom Tovim, Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim. When we make Kiddush, we say Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim. When we make Kiddush on Shabbos, we say Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim. Everything is to remind us of Yetzias Mitzrayim. So on page 296, the Ramban begins, and the art scroll has an introduction. Ramban now begins a lengthy discussion of the unique importance of Yetzias Mitzrayim, the Exodus, explaining why the Torah gives us so many mitzvahs to commemorate that event. He ultimately expounds on the underlying purpose of all the mitzvahs and of creation itself. You can imagine what this piece of Ramban is going to be. Ramban is now going to explain to us the purpose of mitzvahs and the purpose of creation. Now, we study some of this in the Das Tavunas in Ramchal. We talk about the purpose of creation. Ramchal talked about the purpose of creation is lehetiv. He talked about the Gilui HaYichud, the purpose of creation. So you can imagine what's going to be coming in this Ramban, or it's Ramban, when he's going to explain to us his view of the purpose of mitzvahs and the purpose of creation itself. Ramban. Va'ata omer lecha klal b'tam mitzvahs rabos. Now I shall tell you a general principle regarding the explanation of many commandments. Hine me'eis heyos avodah zarah ba'olam mimei enosh hechelu hadeos lehishtabish b'emunah. From the time idolatry came into being in the world, from the days of Enosh, views regarding the authentic principle of faith began to be corrupted by people. Avodah Zarah came into the world. Mehem kofrim be'ikar vorim ke'olam kadmon, ki chashu b'Hashem v'yomu lahu. There's all kinds of non-believers. And with the introduction of Avodah Zarah in the generation of Enosh, and we talked about that, I believe, on Tuesday, this is very on the history of man. Adam Chava, Cain Hevel. Cain killed Hevel. There's no Hevel. Eventually, Cain's family is wiped out as well. How does the world continue? Because Adam and Chava had a third son, Shes. Shes had a son, Enosh. Enosh is the grandson of Adam and Chava. So we're really early in the history of the world. And the Torah says, Oz huchal likro b'shem Hashem. In those days began the desecration of God's name. Avodah Zarah began already in the days of Enosh. So the Ramban says here, some of them denied the fundamental belief in a creator and said that the world is eternally ancient. That is, if you take a look at footnote 75, it had no creator. This is what we talked about when we say that the Rishonim talk about kadmonut. There's this apikursis, this non-believing idea, non-believers idea, that the olam is kadmo. Those are the words in the Ramban. The world was always here. It pre-existed everything. There was no God that brought it into creation. And of course, that contravenes the most basic principle of Yiddishkeit, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world yesh me'ayin, something from nothing, which we talked about in great extent in the Bereshit Shir. So there's one part of non-believers who say God doesn't even exist. The world just came into being. Ubehem makrish b'diyosai hapratim amru eche yada kel v'yeshteh b'elya. And then there's a second group of non-believers. Some of them deny God's knowledge of the particulars of human events. They say, how can God know? Is their knowledge in the Most High? Second group, yes, there's a God. Did he create the world? Did he not create the world? Whatever, there is a God. But there's no way that God knows the details of everything that's going on in the world. Hashgacha. There's no way. God knows what's going on with every blade of grass all over the universe, all over the planet Earth. God knows what's going on with every ant all over the world. God knows what's happening to every tulip all over the world. God knows every pomegranate when it's going to ripen all over the world. And God knows what's going on beyond the Milky Way. There's no way that one quote-unquote entity can contain all this information. So maybe, yeah, there is a God, maybe create the world, nay, but there's no way that, there's no such thing as hashgacha. There's no way that one entity can run such a thing. Umehem, that's a second non-believer. Umehem sheyodu biyadia umachishen bahashgocha. Some of them admit to God's knowledge of world events, but deny his supervision of them. Here again, the Ramban uses the word hashgacha. In other words, the third non-believer says, okay, God is an entity that knows about everything that's going on about it, but he really doesn't care. He's not mashgiach on them. Everybody can do whatever they want. V'yasu odam kidgei hayom, shelo yashgiach hakel behem ve'ini moim oina sheischa. And thus, in their minds, they consider, this is a quote from a pasuk in Habakkuk, they make man into fish. Man is about as important to God as a fish is in the ocean. Or if you want to say it even better, man is about as important to God as an ant. He's meaningless. In a certain way, there's some truth to that. If the Rambam, Hilchis Sodi HaTorah, Perek Aleph, which you mentioned, we're going to start learning next week, if the whole world imploded, there was nothing left, God would still be here. It wouldn't affect him, and it wouldn't affect God's existence in any which way. If God just, the whole universe imploded, God would still be here. It wouldn't affect him in any which way. So the third group of non-believers say, okay, there's a God. All right, maybe even created the world, yo, nay, nay. And he's unbelievable. He computes everything that's going on. But do you think he is directing in a microcosmic way every single event in the world? He's watching out this way, which pomegranate will ripen first and which pomegranate will ripen later and which blade of grass will die and which won't. So there's these three levels of apikoursis. One says the world just came into being, kadmon, there is no creator. And one says, okay, there is a God, but he really doesn't know about everything going on because there's no way for him to know about everything going on. And the third apikourus says there is a God, and yes, he's a great God, he's a genius, he knows everything going on, but because he's so great, and can you imagine how, this is like the Fruma apikourus. Can you imagine a God that knows about every blade of grass? He knows about every tulip. He knows about every pomegranate. He knows about every donkey. Can you imagine, can you even fathom how great this God is? He's so great that what does it make a difference to him, a donkey? What does it make a difference to him if a certain species of animals go extinct? What does it make a difference if one person dies or one person lives? We're talking about the most exalted, greatest entity that anyone can imagine. He knows everything. Why do you think he cares about every ant and every pomegranate? Why do you think this makes a difference to him? Everything is no more than fish to him. Goldfish die, goldfish are born, and not a big deal. And the same way, that's not a big deal. The whole world's not a big deal. These are the three apikourses. The Omrim Ozav Hashem es ha'oretz. And this last group say, Hashem does not see us. Hashem has forsaken the land. And this comes through from a pasuk in Yecheskel. If you take a look at footnote 80, this last group, they believe that humans are as insignificant as animals who certainly receive no providential treatment or divine judgment. There's no din and cheshbon on animals. The Rebbe Shalom didn't give them Torah mitzvahs, and the Rebbe Shalom doesn't give schar and onesh to animals. They have a different way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs the world, whether we can call it the hashgacha kloles, whatever we're going to call it. That's those are hashgachas issues. But man is no different. He's insignificant in the world. He's as significant as a goldfish. So these are the three rudimentary forms of apikoursis that came into the world beginning in the door of Enosh with Avodah Zarah. Continuing in the Ramban. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to uproot these three forms of apikoursis, he wants to get the world back on track. He wants the world to recognize that he exists, that he created the world, that he knows everything that's going on in the world. and that he is mashgiach, he supervises everything that goes on in the world. What does God do in order to uproot these three forms of apikursis and replace them with the truth? What does he do? He sends messengers to the world, and those messengers are the Jewish people. However, when God favors a group or an individual and performs a wonder for them involving an alteration of the world's usual course and natural law, Yisbarel Lakol Bittul Hadeus Elu Kulam. This will result in the negation of these heretical views. Ki hamofes hanif lamorit sheyesh laolam elokam achadsha yodea umashgiach v'yacham. For the supernatural wonders, the nisim, indicate that the world indeed has a God who originated it ex nihilo, yesh me'ayin. God created the world something from nothing. He knows all. He oversees all that occurs within it and is all powerful. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes and says, Moshe, go tell Paro I'm turning the water into blood, turns water into blood, and so on and so forth. And the Rebbeinu Shalom takes Ma'aseh Bereshis. If there was no creator who was turning the water into blood, if there was no creator who was having the animals running out of the woods, the lions, the tigers, the bears, what are they doing on Main Street in Mitzrayim? Who is the one that is bringing the shchin, the boils coming down from heaven? Who is bringing this borod? Who is bringing this arba? Who is bringing the choshev? Who is doing this? This doesn't make sense. The sun rises, the sun sets every day. Suddenly there's no light. Who is doing this? And not only that, before it happened, a messenger of God came and said, listen, I'm telling you, the God of the world is going to do this. He's going to darken Mitzrayim, and boom, is darkness on Mitzrayim. People have the Mitzrayim, and eventually it happens to them. They say, whoa, and they come to Paro and complain and say, let them go. This God's going to destroy the whole country. Let them go now, Paro. It finally dawns on them that all their crazy non-beliefs are really crazy. Because Moshe says it's going to get dark, and it gets dark. Moshe doesn't say, I'm making it dark. Moshe says, I'm telling you in the name of the God of the Jewish people, it's getting dark here. It gets dark. Moshe says, in the name of the Jewish people, in the name of the God of the Jewish people, this country is going to be overrun by locusts, and suddenly the locusts come. So now the Ramban says, and when that wonder is furthermore publicly declared beforehand through a prophet, the truth of the principle of prophecy is made clear as well. Not only do the Mitzrayim begin to understand that there's a Jewish God who runs the world, but they understand that the Jewish God has messengers, he has prophets who can tell you what God is going to do in the world. Namely, that God will speak to a person and reveal his secrets to his servants, the prophets. And with this with the acknowledgement of this principle, the entire Torah is sustained. Footnote 85, for then the Torah, which was transmitted to us by the prophet Moshe, has the authority associated with being the authentic word of God. Once Moshe proves himself, I am God's prophet, and God speaks to me, and God said there will be darkness, and there's darkness, and God says there will be locust, and there's locust, I am God's spokesman on planet Earth. And when I come to the world, and I come to the Jewish people, and I say, God told me that you put on tzitzis. God told me you put up a mezuzah. I understand that Moshe Rabbeinu is God's messenger on earth, because when he told Mitzrayim there's going to be darkness, in the name of God, I'm telling you there's going to be darkness, it's darkness. And when Moshe Rabbeinu says in the name of God you wear tzitzis, you wear tzitzis. And when Moshe Rabbeinu comes to Paro at the end and says, we're going to kill all your firstborn, and all the firstborn get killed, Paro's looking in the streets in his pajamas. He's looking for Moshe Rabbeinu. He says, okay, get out. It finally struck me. Get out. V'lachein yomer hakosav b'mofsim. And therefore, there are 3 psukim that you need to focus on when we deal with the miracles. The first one is Laman Teda Ki Ani Hashem B'Koyaf Ha'oretz L'Horetz Ala Hashgacha. Before HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent Makas Orov, the wild beast parading through Main Street and all over Mitzrayim, the pasuk says, Laman Teda, Moshe Rabbeinu told Paro, these wild beasts are coming out so that you will know that I am Hashem in the midst of the land. There are 3 Laman Tedas in the Makos. And the Ramban's going to discuss all 3. There are 3 times Paro was told, I'm doing this Laman Teda so that you should know I'm teaching you a lesson. And Paro is going to get 3 major lessons. The first time HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Paro, this is why you're getting a makkah. It says, Laman Teda Ki Ani Hashem B'Kerev Ha'oretz. You will know that I am Hashem in the midst of the land, indicating the idea of divine providence. Kilo ozav osam lemikram kedaitam. God did not abandon the land to random occurrences, as was the heretics' view. The apicursus number 3. Apicursus number 3 is the first one the Ramban deals with. Apicursus number 3 was, yeah, there's a God, yeah, he created the world, but God really doesn't care about the world. Why would a God who is so great, he knows everything. He knows everything that was, is, and will be. He knows about every creature. He knows about every. Why is he concerned about what, you understand that God's not really concerned about what a goldfish does or doesn't do? Why would he be more concerned about a human being? Human beings are insignificant. They're insignificant. They're just fish when you compare them to God. And God says to Paro before the Makas Orov, Laman Teda Ki Ani Hashem B'Kerev Ha'oretz. I am the God in the midst of this world. I am in this world, and I'm concerned about this world, and I direct this world. I'm here. I didn't walk away from this world because it's insignificant. It is very significant, and I am here in the midst of this world. For Omar, the Ramban says, and then there's the second pasuk, Laman Teda Ki Lashem Ha'oretz. When the Moshe Rabbeinu warned Paro that Borod is coming, Hashem said to Moshe, tell Paro, Laman Teda Ki Hashem Ha'oretz. I'm going to teach you now that the land belongs to Hashem. Lahoros al hachidush, to teach us that God is the creator, indicating the idea of the origination of the world by a creator. Ki mi shelo bra'o me'ayin, because Hashem, by virtue of the fact that he created them from nothing, he therefore can change them. You own an apartment. You're the balabayas. You have that key to open the apartment. And you have the key to go into the apartment and rearrange furniture, take out furniture, put in furniture, open the tap water, close the tap water, sell the apartment, all kinds of things you can do because you own the key, you own the apartment. Somebody comes by and he puts a key in there, the key doesn't open. He's not the balabayas. When the Ribono Shel Olam changes the, quote unquote, the natural course of events, blood will be water, darkness will come, locusts will come, wild beasts will come out of everywhere. There's going to be boils coming down from heaven. There's going to be hail coming down from heaven. These are unnatural events. That means Ribono Shel Olam is the balabas of the world. Only the person with the key to the world, only the person, only the entity that created the water can tell the water you are now to be blood. Only the Ribono Shel Olam, who made light, can tell the sun no light for the Mitzrayim. Only the person, only the entity with the key to the apartment can control what's going on in the apartment. And therefore, the Rebbeinu Shalom tells Moshe, tell Paro, Laman Teda Ki Lashem Haaretz, you are to know that the whole world belongs to me. I created it, and now I'm going to show you how I can change it. Because I made it, I can change it. No one else can change it. And this goes back to the first Rashi in Bereshis we learned earlier. The Rebbeinu Shalom created the whole world, Beresh Bo Elokim Hashemayim V'Haaretz, and He gave us Eretz Yisrael forever. Ki Lashem Haaretz, the world belongs to Hashem. He created it. V'Omar, and then there's the third pasuk, Teda, the third lesson, and this is, the second pasuk was at the end of Borod. This third pasuk is now when Moshe Rabbeinu is warning Paro about Borod. V'Omar, Hashem said to Moshe, tell Paro, before I bring the Borod, ba'avur Teda ki ein kamoni b'chol haaretz. What you're going to learn now is that there is, you'll know that there is none like me in the whole world. This indicates the idea of omnipotence of Hashem. Shu shalit bakol, a ma'akev biyado, He rules over the world, nothing can deter Him. Ki b'chol zeh hoya mitzvim machashim o mistapkim. All these three disbeliefs were in Mitzrayim. There was no creator, congregation 1. There was a creator, but he really doesn't know what's going on in the world, congregation 2. There's a creator, he knows what's going on, but he's such a great creator, he's such a great genius, he doesn't really care what's going on in the world. And through the Makos, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said 3 times to Moshe, you had to tell Paro 3 times in 3 different words, 3 different phrases. Laman Teda, I'm doing this in order you should know. Ki ani Hashem bekeref haaretz, I am in the midst of the world. I am right here watching it, directing it. Laman Teda ki lashem haaretz, you should know that this land is mine, I created it. Laman Teda ba'avur Teda ki ein kamoni b'chol haaretz, there's nobody like me. I know everything that's going on. And so these 3 congregations of Apikorsim were being taught the lessons to undo this Apikorsis. Im kein ha'osis v'amosim hagdolim edim nemonim be'emunas haboirei u'b'torah kula. Accordingly, the great signs and wonders in Egypt are trustworthy witnesses with regard to the belief in the Creator and the entire Torah. So now we're beginning to get a flavor. The Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim. Twice a day we have to say Kriya Shema. We have to remember that God took us out of Mitzrayim as part of Kriya Shema. And we do so many mitzvahs, Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim, Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim, Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim, Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim. Because of Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim, we have to understand what Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim means. Remember, God took us out of Egypt with these miracles that demonstrated to the Apikorsim and needs to demonstrate to us that there is a God who created the world and He is the sovereign of the world. This God knows about everything that's happening in the world, and this God directs events in the world. He is concerned and actively involved in world events. And this is the underlying root of the Torah. And this is the underlying root of our message to the world. And this is demonstrated through Yetzias Mitzrayim. And so we have to constantly remember Yetzias Mitzrayim. It's the foundation of Jewish faith. And it's the basis upon which we uproot the 3 forms of Apikorsis. Now the Ramban continues and answers a kasha. If this is what the Rebbeinu Shalom wants, how about doing a couple of miracles in 2021? The world is in desperate need for miracles, right? We're in desperate need for miracles. You have all these kind of atheists going around today. It sounds like the message of Mitzrayim has been lost over the time since 2448. There's plenty of atheists in the world. There's plenty of perversion in the world, plenty of immorality in the world. Rebbeinu Shalom may be a little choshech here and there, a little borod here and there, a little corona here and there. But we don't get it because, as we're going to see hopefully today in the Ramban, We don't get it because these things are now called natural disasters. This is not being done by God. So people are not taking the opportunity to see God. If God would send a prophet last year, and a prophet would come, a Jewish prophet would come and say, folks, I want the whole world to know that unless we get rid of abortion, unless we get rid of gay rights, unless we stop transgenders, unless the whole world starts doing tshuva, a Yonah type of thing. Instead of Yonah coming to Nineveh, we have a Yonah that comes to the world and says, listen, if you don't change what's going on here, Corona is coming to the world. Let me tell you about Corona. Corona is going to kill over 400,000 Americans. Worldwide, you can't imagine what it's going to kill. You can't imagine how much pain and suffering it's going to cause. It's going to turn the world topsy-turvy. And when you think that Pfizer and Moderna and alle gute Geschmacke Sachen, and again, everybody has their shita, everybody should follow the Gedolim, everybody should speak to their Rav about the vaccination. The vaccination is the vaccination. People have asked me what I did, I vaccinated. The vaccination is the vaccination. But the Rosh Hashanah's talking to us. We talked about this several weeks ago. Not much like the week that the vaccine, quote unquote, got rolled out, the news was talking about new mutations. And these new mutations are much more contagious. So imagine if there was a Yonah, there was a Navi that said, instead of to Nineveh, he said, listen, I am warning you for the last time. This has gone far enough. I know your Supreme Court has said that gays can get married, and you have to give them a marriage license. And I know that transgenders have become your professors in the universities. And I even know this week, the genius Biden, he nominated a person to be the assistant head of the Department of Health and Human Services, which, if anybody keeps up with these things, Department of Health and Human Services in America is basically the largest department in the United States. It has the biggest body, the regulatory body. It controls Medicaid, Medicare, bahulu. You can imagine how many millions of Americans are on Medicaid or Medicare, and this is the government bureau that takes care of all these things. It is beyond imagination how big it is, beyond imagination how many people work. And who did he nominate to be the assistant head of HHS? I don't know how to say this. I don't know if it's a Jewish man or a Jewish woman. I'm not sure how to say it. But it's a man who is now a woman who's Jewish. So imagine Yonah talking to the world saying, listen, this is your last chance, really. This is your last chance. God has watched enough of this. He watched it before the Mabul, and he took down the world. He watched it at the Dor HaFloga, and he spread everyone out into different places and created 70 different nations. Listen, if you continue on this path, Corona is coming, etc., etc. And then Corona comes, and people start dying. People would say, wow, maybe we really need to do tshuva. And then they would say, no, it's a coincidence. Like the Mitzrayim said at the beginning, you want to change water to blood? Get my witchcraft out, my witchcraft makers out. Get my chatumim, get my machash from here. Let's see, can you change water to blood? And they change water to blood. And narishkeit, we don't have to worry about the Jewish God. And Moshe Rabbeinu says, I'm telling you, I'm going to bring frogs on the whole Mitzrayim. The place is going to smell and stink. And he says, it's okay, no problem. And then he calls out his witchcraft makers again. And he says, can you make frogs? And they make frogs. And he says, Moshe, get out of here. And then Moshe says, I'm going to bring lice all over the place. And then he brings out his witchcraft makers. And his witchcraft makers try to bring the lice, and they can't do it. And Paro says, okay, Kini, Orov, Dever, Shchin. He doesn't get the message. Until finally Max B'chayvus, and after Max B'chayvus says, let them go. But can you imagine if a year ago, the Rebbeinu Shalom had sent someone here and said, listen, I'm going to bring Corona to the world. And you're not going to be able to say that, oh, it came from Wuhan, it came from Shmuan, it came from a laboratory, it came from bats, it came from here, it came from there. We don't know where it came from, but one thing I can tell you it came from God. And a Navi can tell you that this came from God. Maybe God sent it through Wuhan, maybe he sent it through Shmuhan, maybe he sent it through a bat. Wherever he sent it, God sent it. And he's going to send it, and hundreds of thousands of people, and I don't know what the number is worldwide, but hundreds of thousands of people are going to die, and it's going to be a plague. It's going to be a plague. You got to do tshuva. And then it begins to unfold. Imagine what the world reaction would be. Why is HaKadosh Baruch Hu doing that anymore? So Ramban now explains. Ubavur ki Hashem lo yasa osu mofes b'chol dor be'eni kol rosha o kofer. Because God does not perform a sign or wonder in every generation in sight of every evil and unbeliever. In other words, the Ribono Shel Olam, every time an evil person or an evil community is going to step up on the world stage, they are going to force God to make more miracles. I need to do another miracle because of this. This Shmendrik got up and he's a Rosh. I need to do a miracle to prove that he's wrong. A different Shmendrik stood up. And God will be busy, quote unquote, doing miracles because he has to prove himself constantly. So take a look at footnote 90. God does not desire the world to deviate from the quote unquote natural order. The Ribono Shel Olam created the world in the 6 days of creation, and he wanted the world to exist al pi the 10 mamoris: light, dark, fish, reproduction, birds, trees. God wanted the world to exist. A tree grows, it's watered, it gets chlorophyll. You don't do that, the tree will die. God created these rules. That's the way he wants the world to exist. So therefore, doing a miracle is a great exception to the rule where God is going to interfere with the Asara Mamoris. God said, let there be light. And then God created on the fourth day the sun and the moon. And the sun rises and sets, and the moon comes and goes. And that's the world order that God said. For God to interfere in his own world order is an exceptional event that is left for very, very few occasions. Yitzava Osanu, going out to page 298, therefore, God commanded us that we should constantly have a reminder and a sign for what our eyes saw in Egypt. And there's a prohibition in Torah, lo senasu. We're not allowed to test God. Let me see if I do this, will God do this? God already has proven himself. Not every shmendrik can say, I want God to prove himself to me. God's not going to do that. He has proven himself at Yetzias Mitzrayim. And we transmit this to our children, and our children to their children, and their children to their own children to the last generation. And this is what the Leil HaSeder is about. Rabbi Say, this is such a critical Ramban to read over and over and over. And it's a critical Ramban to learn Pesach at night, to understand what Yetzias Mitzrayim is about. It was that world event where God said, I'm uprooting from the world this apikursis. Yeah, but there are so many atheists today. Okay, so you want God to perform a miracle for every atheist? Every single person that's going to stand up and say something very, very stupid, God's going to have to say, oh, I have to prove him wrong. Oh, I have to prove him wrong. Oh, I have to prove him wrong. God doesn't do that. God brought Mitzrayim to their knees, and we tell the story to our children, and our children to their children to their children, till the end of generations. And that's why we have all these mitzvahs, Eichel Yetzias Mitzrayim, so that we can remain believers in God. Parenthetically, I'll tell you a story. The background of the story is a long background, not Negeah for right now. I once went to see, I was taken by Rav Holland, Zechron Tzaddik Livrocha, a famous Rav who started in the Bronx. He was at one time president of the Rabbinical Council of America. When I got to meet him, he was quite old. And he was going to speak to Lubavitcher Rebbe about a certain inyan, and I happened to be in Brooklyn at that time, and he said, I want to take you to Lubavitcher Rebbe with me. I went to Lubavitcher Rebbe, Zechron Tzadik Levracha, and there was an issue about something that people were quoting the Lubavitcher Rebbe as having said. It became very public knowledge that the Lubavitcher Rebbe said XYZ is okay. And people who were close to Lubavitcher Rebbe said it's absolutely false. He never said such a thing. He would never say such a thing. So Hollander went to Lubavitcher Rebbe and asked Lubavitcher Rebbe to write a letter stating that this and this that is being said in my name is absolutely false. I never said such a thing. And Lubavitcher Rebbe said, I can't write such a letter. Rav Hollander asked him why. Why can't you write the letter? So Lubavitcher Rebbe said in his Chochmah, his tremendous Chochmah, he said, every day rumors are brought to me, people quoting me about things I never said. Lubavitcher Rebbe said this, Lubavitcher Rebbe did this miracle, he did this, he did this, he said this, he said this. Every day, you know how many things I hear about me that are said in my name, or some people say that I do certain things. So let's say this happens every day, which it does, and I start writing letters. This thing has been said about me, it's not true. This thing is said about me, it's not true. Now let's say 10 things were said about me today, and I write a letter. And I miss one. I write 9 letters. This was said about me, not true. This was said about not true. And I miss one of them. But what are people going to start saying? He denied 9 things, but that 10th thing, he didn't deny. He must have really said it. So he said, once I get into the business of denying rumors that are said about me, I'm never going to be finished. And I end up opening a can of worms that when I don't deny something which I never said, people say, oh, he must have said it. I'm not getting into the business of denying what people say. If people are interested to know if I said something or not, as you came to me today, you can talk to me. You can tell people you spoke to me. Okay. God is not going to set up a system of, I need to prove, I need to deny this apikairis, I need to deny this apikairis. God's not going to get into the business of proving every shmendrik wrong. God did this at one time for the whole world to see it, and they did. We're saying the Oziyah, we're going to say in the Oziyah next week, Shamu Am Yurgos and Chil Ochaz Yoship Ploshes. The whole world saw, the whole world heard, except for Amalek, which became a problem. And this is why the Ramban continues. God is exceedingly stringent with respect to Mitzrayim and Yetzias Mitzrayim. As we see the fact that God imposed a severe penalty of the heavenly death penalty for eating chametz during Pesach, for neglecting to bring a korban Pesach. These are unbelievable punishments for what we would think, okay, you're not allowed to eat chaza either. You eat chaza, you get 39 lashes, chas v'sholom. You eat chametz, you get a heavenly death penalty. Okay, you have to bring a korban Pesach. You didn't bring a korban Pesach. Korban Pesach is one of the very few exceptions. Korban Pesach and Bris Milah. Punishments, lo aleinu, come when God says don't do something and you stand up and do it. Don't eat chaza, you eat the chaza. Don't have relation with such a woman, and a person chas shalom does. Don't violate Shabbos, and a person gets up and carries in the street on Shabbos. It's always don't do, and a person does. When we talk about a shev al taisa, God says do something, and you sit in your chair and don't do it. There are virtually no cases in which a person gets, quote unquote, the severe penalties. There's no really case. There are 2 cases that we know about. We're not going to go into it more deeply. Bris Milah, a person doesn't have a Bris Milah done on himself, whether it's the father or the son, whoever it is, that's a chiyuv kares. You didn't do anything, you just failed to do something. The other one is korban Pesach. God said bring a korban Pesach. And the person doesn't bring a korban Pesach. He's chayav the heavenly death penalty. God said if a person does an aver b'shogeg, a person violated Shabbos in error, whatever shogeg means. He's commanded to bring a korban chatas. He doesn't bring the korban chatas. Okay, he didn't have he didn't bring the korban chatas. Doesn't get the heavenly death penalty because he didn't bring a korban chatas. Person doesn't bring Korban Pesach, he's chayav the heavenly death penalty. So the Rebbeinu Shalom was very machmir in these things that have to do with Mitzrayim, not to eat chametz, to bring a Korban Pesach. And then the Ramban goes through so many mitzvahs that we do that is zeicher liyetzias Mitzrayim. We'll stop here for today. In fact, we'll skip a little piece of the Ramban that we'll do bli neder next week. And we're going to go to the last page of the handout, page 300 in the Ramban. We talk about teva, nature. Umin hanisim, at the last paragraph on page 300, Umin hanisim hagdoilim hamafursamim ademoide banisim hanistorm shem yisoid hatoyra kula. Through recalling and acknowledging the great manifest miracles of the Exodus, a person ultimately acknowledges the hidden miracles of everyday life. Footnote 106. There's something called a Nes Nigla. God splits the sea. Wow, everybody can see that. God brings wild beasts into Mitzrayim. Nes Nigla. But then on the other hand, we call, for example, Purim a Nes Nista. It's a hidden miracle. It looks like political intrigue. The Jewish queen saves the people. Nothing, okay. There's no water turning into blood. There's something called a Nes Nigla. God changes nature. And then there's a Nes Nista where God works through nature and you can't really see him. So he's hidden in there. Footnote 106, a manifest miracle is a window onto Hashem's conduct of the world. For man actually witnesses God's alteration of the natural order. Man reasons, since God can affect the natural order, he must be the one who maintains it, and perforce it is through hidden miracles that he does so. It turns out then that the open miracles of the Exodus reveal the true essence of quote-unquote nature. And this is from Rabbi Yerucham Levovitz. And I'll read it to you as the way Rav Shavel quotes it. This is the Ramban with Rav Shavel's commentary. And on this very piece of Ramban, Rav Shavel quotes this Rav Yerucham Levovitz, was the mashgiach in the Mir in Europe. What we learned from all the miracles of Yetzias Mitzrayim, and we've talked about this many times, especially for the Leil HaSeder. The Leil HaSeder, we love to talk about all the miracles that God did, and we let our children or grandchildren walk away from the table and say, God's unbelievable, he can do miracles. That's not the tachlis of the Seder, that's not the tachlis of Yetzias Mitzrayim. The purpose of Yetzias Mitzrayim and all the miracles was not to teach you that the Jewish God can do wonders and miracles. Just the opposite. The purpose of all the miracles was for a person to learn what, quote unquote, the word teva, quote unquote, the word nature means. There is no such thing as nature. Nature is just God's hidden miracle. You try to make sense out of it in a rational way. Why? You put an apple seed in the ground, and then it gets water, and it's chlorophyll, and a big tree comes out, and big apples come out. You can eat the apples, and it's a magnificent, beautiful tree. And then if you put a pomegranate seed in the ground, the pomegranate will grow, and you'll get a completely different fruit. And then you can plant an olive, and you'll get olives. And of course, the scientists will tell you, you open the olive seed, you open the apple seed, you open the pomegranate seed, the DNA inside there is different. So of course, this seed gives off a pomegranate, this seed gives off the apple, this seed gives off the olive. The DNA in there is different. Of course, they give off. Rabbi, who put the DNA in there? Who put the DNA in there? Where did it come from? Where did the DNA even come from? And who made different DNAs? So the purpose of the miracles where God changes nature is for a person to have a red light go off in his brain and say, how did water become blood? Where did the lice come from? How did the darkness come to the world? Where did the beast come from? It's only possible if there's an entity that has the key to the apartment that can open the door and change anything inside the apartment. There's a balabayas here. There has to be a God that has the key to this universe because he created it and therefore he has the key. And when he opens the door, he can go into it and say, when you open the tap, it's going to be blood, not water. And when you open your window, frogs are coming through. And when you open the front door, a lion's coming in. Who is doing this? This didn't happen yesterday. It didn't happen for the last 2,000 years. Who changed this? Oh, it must be for the last 2,000 years. There was a God, and there wasn't an order that he put into the world. And now he's changing the order. He wants to prove something to us. So the tachlis of Yetzias Mitzrayim is not to walk away and say, the Jewish God can do unbelievable miracles. The tachlis of Yetzias Mitzrayim is to understand the Jewish God runs, controls, and is the sovereign of the world. And he proved it by doing miracles. Not that the miracles are the tachlis of Yetzias Mitzrayim. The tachlis of Yetzias Mitzrayim is to understand the natural order, quote unquote, is a God-given thing. God made it and he can change it. Now we go back to the Art Scroll. And this is the quote that we talk about so many times in the Shiur. It's on page 300. She'ein la'adam chelik b'toyres Moshe Rabbeinu ad sheyamin b'chol d'oreinu u'mekreinu kulam nisim. A person has no share in the Torah of Moses, our teacher, unless he believes that all our affairs and experiences are miracles. Everything's a miracle. Going back to the Das Tarunos, there's no default setting that you went to sleep sighted, that you'll wake up sighted. You make a bracha every morning, Pakeach Ivrim. You are able to see today. It's not a continuation of yesterday. Every moment it's a miracle. But we get lost in it because since it's a repetitive miracle, it happens so often and it happens and it happens and it happens. What happens when things happen so often? The human tendency is to get used to them, not to appreciate them, not to see what's really happening. My heart was beating yesterday, it's going to beat today. My lungs worked yesterday, it'll work today. Hakol b'seida, hakol yeh b'seida. It's just going to continue the way it is. And sometimes the Rebbeinu Shalom has to come into the natural order and say, I can disturb your natural order. I know how to wake you up. I know how to shake you up. I can send you a corona and wake up and shake up. You hear me? I'm talking to you. Please listen. I'm talking. Can I have your attention, please? And there's no such thing as Teva. And anybody that believes there's such a thing as a natural order outside God's control has no share in Torah's Moshe. Everything that happens is a miracle. There are two types of miracles. There's the miracle of Yetzias Mitzrayim. There's the miracle of Kriyas Yamsuf. And then there's a Purim event. And then there's living daily. We can, Baruch Hashem, see and we breathe. Kol HaNeshama Taluka. Every soul should praise God. And we keep on mentioning the Gemara and Baruch Kol Neshima Neshima. Every breath you take, a person should praise God for the miracle of the next breath. Ein la'adam chelik b'toyres Moshe Rabbeinu at sheyamin shekol v'reinu makreinu kulam nisim. A person has no share in Toyres Moshe. That's a terrible thing to say. The person has no share in Toyres Moshe. I mean, basically, he's a non-believer. Unless he believes shekol v'reinu, everything that happens to us, umakreinu, and every one of our experiences, kulam nisim. They're all miracles. But sometimes God, and he did this at Mitzrayim for once and for all, and sometimes later in history when he felt necessary. But Yetzias Mitzrayim is the prototype of God coming into the world and uprooting the three forms of Avodah Zarah. And this is why we remember Yetzias Mitzrayim every single day, 2 times in Kriya Shema, and we do so many mitzvahs, and we make Kiddush on Shabbos, Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim. We need to remember when we say Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim, we mean Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim, and focus for a minute. Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim, because God created the world, he's the sovereign of the world, he runs the world, and even the daily things that seem to be a natural order are God, miracles, Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim. Bli Neder will read the middle part of the Ramban next week, where he discusses the purpose of creation. All Yidden need Yeshua Shav, Yeshua's, all Yidden need Nechama Shav, Nechamas, all Yidden need Bracha Shav, all Brachas of Baruch Hashem, Shefa Bracha from the Or Panav to Klal Yisrael. All Yidden need Refuah Shav, Refuahs, Yeshua's, Nechamas, and Brachas can only come from the Rebbeinu Shalom, the Echad, Yachad, Umiyuchad, when he wants, how he wants, and if it's a Shliach, only through the Shliach he wants. Before Shalema, Tiyosef Chaim Ben Shoshana Menucha, before Shalema, Liva Malka Bas Chaya Braina, Chochole Akarona, the Soch Shachal Yisrael, for Snevish was a good Hashem Agalos, Man Karib, Lamar Amen. Unfortunately, I didn't mention Moshe Halevi Ben David Avrik, who we've been mentioning in the Shir in St. Tillam for. Moshe Avrik was nifter yesterday in the morning from Corona. He Zichro Baruch. And there's information that was sent around about how it's possible for those who knew him, didn't know, how to be Menachem Avel, the family, by phone. He Zichro Baruch. Everybody, please take care of yourselves. Go out when you need to go out. Avoid going out when you don't need to go out. And in there, we make the cheshbon. Even if I have to go out, there are times where the stores are less busy, more busy. We think about these cheshbonis to keep ourselves well and healthy. We're doing a mitzvah. Last two Beis Yosefs and Choshen Mishpat. The last Ber HaGoyel and Choshen Mishpat. It's not Avodas Hashem. It's a mitzvah to take care of yourselves. I don't know how many people saw this. Yehuda Meshi Zahav, who we've quoted before, he's the founder of Zaka. He gave an interview. I'm just reading the headline. That's a quote from him. Zaka founder Yehuda Meshi Zahav calls some rabbis worse than Holocaust deniers. And that's a really severe thing to say. And he's talking about the rabbis who are not controlling their congregations, the rabbis who are watching big weddings happen. And he calls them worse than Holocaust deniers because they're denying how deadly COVID is, and they're watching people die, and they know people are dying, and for some reason they became tipshim. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu should open our eyes. We should take care of ourselves. We should be healthy. We should be able to be healthy and be able to accompany Mashiach Tzidkenu, B'tzayin Hashem, mamish today, to build a Beis HaMikdash, to bring a Machzis HaShekel, to bring a carbon, B'tzayin Hashem, mamish today. We should all be healthy and well. Everybody should have a wonderful Shabbos. It's Parshas Bo, the first Rashi in Chumash. The Rebbeinu Shalom gave us Eretz Yisrael because it's ours forever. Nobody can take it away from us, and nobody will take it away from us ever again. That's part of a prophecy. When the Nazis, Yimach Shemam, were marching already in Egypt, and they were coming towards Eretz Yisrael, I think it's called Alamin. They were coming towards Eretz Yisrael, and the Yidden in Eretz Yisrael, there wasn't that great population then, but they were Yidden in Eretz Yisrael. They were very worried about the Nazis entering Eretz Yisrael and destroying the Yidden. And the first chief rabbi of Israel was asked about this. What should we do? And he's quoted as having said the following. In our books of Nevi'im upon which we live, there was a prophecy that if Jews don't do tshuva, there's going to be a churban bayis rishon. And that happened. There was also, we were told that the second bayis was going to be destroyed because Yecheskel already was told by HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the chapters, chapter 45, 46, Yecheskel was already told by HaKadosh Baruch Hu how to build the third Beis HaMikdash, and the second one wasn't even built yet, and he's being told how to build the third. And so Rav Herzog said, we live on the words of Nevi'im. There's discussion about a first destruction. There's discussion about a second destruction. We have no nevuah that talks about God forbid a third destruction. They're not getting into Eretz Yisrael. They were defeated there in Egypt, I think in Elamim, and that's it. We have no other, that's how we live on nevuah. The first Rashi that comes up in this week's Parsha, Eretz Yisrael is ours. It's not going to be taken from us. We have to have the courage to say to the world, we're not listim, we're not settlers. Everybody listen up good. Listen up good. God created the world. He's the master of the universe. He took us out of Egypt, and he's not giving the land away to anybody. It's ours forever, permanently. And when we read this week's Parsha, we should remember what Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim means, remembering Yetzias Mitzrayim. And we do this twice a day. So when we read Kriya Shema twice a day, besides saying that with Kavana and Shema Yisrael, when you say the last pasuk in Kriya Shema, Ani Hashem Elokeichem Asher Hotzeisi Eschem Me'eretz Mitzrayim Lios Lachem Elokim, I am the God who took you out of Mitzrayim. Pause for a moment and think about this Ramban. What does it mean that God took us out of Mitzrayim? It means that God uprooted for once and for all this crazy apikourses, and the people that forgot it, that's their problem. But God performed these miracles so that I would understand that God is the creator, he's the sovereign, he's concerned about the world, he's directing the world. That is Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim. We should pause twice a day when we say the pasuk to think about. Everybody have a wonderful Shabbos Kodesh. Sei gesund, stay healthy. And Me'etz Hashem will continue on Sunday. Obviously, we're going to do Shavuos. We'll start with that. And maybe instead of the Das Tevunos on Sunday, maybe we'll finish this Ramban on Sunday. Everybody have a wonderful day. Sei gesund and stark.